They changed the lock while I was in the stairwell, holding a bag of mandarins and a loaf still warm from the bakery. When the handle didn't turn, my daughter-in-law laughed through the peephole and said I was confusing floors again. The neighbors heard it. The metal door echoed like a lid closing on a tin. She told me to go rest at the cafe downstairs and they'd check the mechanism, as if a door should be checked with my groceries on the mat. I stood there with the smell of citrus on my hands, feeling smaller than the crack under the door where my own slippers sat politely facing the hall, waiting for feet I wasn't allowed to use. I am 69, and I know the creak of my building's third-floor landing and the click of my old brass key as well as I know the birthmarks on my late husband's shoulder. This wasn't confusion. But when I said so, my son's voice arrived behind hers, soft and reasonable the way he is with clients at his auto shop. "Mama, the locksmith said the old keys are unsafe. We'll bring you a new one once we finish moving the heavy things. Sit down, please. You'll make me worry. It's funny the things that slip when you're trying not to cry." My bag tore. The mandarins rolled across the stair in a soft little orange migration. Old Don Emilio, our concierge, came out with his broom and didn't meet my eye. He swept the fruit toward me as if he were returning stray cats. "They said it's for your safety, Senora," he murmured. "You forget the gas sometimes." My husband used to tease that I remembered everyone's birthdays, even the pharmacist's, but yes, twice I'd left tea water too long. I bent slowly, and the bones in my knees made a sound like a question. Since I was widowed, small routines became my work. Mornings folding uniforms for my grandchildren, afternoons mending clothes for neighbors, evenings adding up the small coins I earned from hemming curtains. In a drawer I kept envelopes labeled with dates, electricity, water, community fees, and I ticked them off in a blue pen like a school secretary, which is what I had been. Invisible work, the kind that has no receipt until it isn't done. My daughter-in-law, Anna, liked to say I kept cute little lists like a child playing office. She said it generously in front of others and sharply when it was just us. That afternoon I was told to wait downstairs, and I waited. The cafe on the corner smells of oil and old wood, and the waiter calls me guapa because that's cheaper than a raise. I took a sugar packet and drew little squares like the tiles in my kitchen, the kitchen that now had a new lock. When I went back up, the door opened and Anna handed me a single key on a new ring with a little pink tassel, as if giving a toy. "Only one," she said. "Because you misplace things." I put the key in my pocket and went straight to the balcony to water the basil. Little things survived in this house because I kept them alive. I could see my reflection in the glass door. My name is Carmen, but my face in that glass looked like any patient old woman from any story told too late. I found the courage to ask what heavy things had been moved. My son said it was just boxes from the closet, but I knew my closet and how many winters it had held. Something had been shifted that I would not name. At dinner, they smiled and called me our queen, and my grandson giggled with mashed potato on his cheek, and for a moment I allowed myself to be tired and loved. Later, after everyone slept, I arranged my sewing basket and fixed a missing button on my son's cuff. When I opened the drawer to put away my envelopes, my fingers landed on paper that didn't belong. Photocopies folded once and slipped in like a dare. The first page showed a document heading I recognized from a lifetime of filing other people's things. Poder. Power of attorney. My name was on it. So was my son's. And in the margin in pencil a neat little note. Change of phone registered. I hadn't changed any phone. My hands, the same hands that mended everyone's loose hems, went suddenly very still. Someone had pushed these papers into my drawer while telling me to sit at a cafe. The next morning I found out who had slipped them. A white envelope, no return address, was shoved under my door before dawn. Inside, one line typed on my old typewriter. The one that squeaks on the "ih." "You didn't sign what they say. Ask for the notary's protocol book." That was when the mandarins rolling down the stairs turned into something heavier rolling in my chest. Someone was watching the watchers. Someone wanted me to look. Someone had given me a key I didn't know how to use yet. And I stood there with a single new lock and a secret invitation to turn it. The gossip started where it always does, in the bread line in the pharmacy queue. "Poor Carmen," said one voice, too loud to be kind. "It happens at that age. One day we're all sharp, the next." Their eyes slid to the side, to where my son had guided me out of the bank gently as a nurse. He had asked me to sit while he sorted the online banking mess. because he said I had been sent a letter about security we needed to fix. The letter had arrived that morning, heavy with a hologram and my bank's name, and it informed me that due to my health my account would be protected under guardianship conditions, with my appointed proxy's phone number as the contact for stressful operations. There was a line about priority for family caregivers. It sounded tender in the way a leash looks like a belt in a dark room. The bank manager, a tall man with a tie the color of old plums, greeted my son by name. "We received your email," he said, as if the matter had been agreed. "Given your mother's confusion, this will ensure she's not targeted by phone scams." He did not look at me until I dropped the letter on his desk and asked him softly to read the signature. "I don't have email," I said. "And I have never called you anything but by your first name, Juan. Who's Juan Luis in this letter?" He blinked, then looked at my son. My son nodded with the sad patience of someone who knows storms are coming and has already opened the umbrella. "Mama, it's just a formality. After Papa, you've been stressed. Remember the gas? Remember the stairs?" The manager asked if I'd like a glass of water. Another cashier, Marta, the one with the red nails who always counts twice, met my eyes briefly. It felt like a hand squeezed mine under the table. That week the humiliations gathered like lint. Anna created a family WhatsApp chat called Carmen Care, where they discussed my moods, shared links to articles about memory supplements, and scheduled who would babysit me on days when, for the last 4 years, I had been the one at school pickup, rain or stun of July heat. I learned about it because my cousin Rosa accidentally added me, then deleted me with a little apology flower emoji. At Sunday lunch, Anna took my plate away after I salted it twice and whispered, with breath that smelled of kava, "We're trying, Carmen, but you have to meet us halfway. Don't be stubborn." She kissed her own son with lips that had just spoken to me like a toddler. In the mail came a letter stamped by a notary's office I didn't know, telling me that the donation of my apartment had been successfully inscribed in the property registry under my son's name, in anticipation of inheritance, to minimize tax burden. At the coffee shop they'd say "so smart" if the story were told differently. The page said I had reserved usufruct for life, my right to live there until I died, which sounded like safety if you didn't see how the edges could be sanded down later by words like unsafe, care home, burden. The letter congratulated us on thinking ahead, but I didn't remember donating anything. I called the number on the letter. A clerk explained cheerfully that I had signed 2 weeks prior, in a brief appointment, and that it had been so convenient, a courtesy, because your son prepared everything. I asked for a copy of my signature. She hesitated, then offered that I could request the protocol book in person. Her voice lowered. "Bring your ID, Senora. We're required to help." At home I found a plastic crate in the corridor with my sewing patterns and my framed wedding photo placed neatly on top, as if it were a kindness to pack my life in a way that looked organized. A yellow sticky note said bedroom shelving to be replaced, and below it an appointment with the contractor. Their plan was to fix the apartment while my life was moved to a storage crate. My son avoided my eyes. He told Anna to remember the care home brochure meeting on Wednesday. "We're not saying now," he rushed. "Just information." To share the load, Anna added and smiled as if I had been a heavy grocery bag. That evening my phone buzzed with another number I didn't know. "Senora Carmen? This is Elena from Notaria Guerrero. We have a discrepancy in your file. Please, if you can, come early tomorrow." She hung up before I could ask what kind. I didn't sleep well. I kept hearing the tiny squeak of my signature line on the typewriter in my drawer, and seeing the way the bank manager had looked at my son instead of me. When dawn came, I made coffee strong as defiance and folded the photocopies into my handbag. On the landing I met Don Emilio. He glanced at the bag and then at me. "They told me to say you're not allowed visitors without Anna home," he said. "But I'm old like you, so I forget." He pushed a small USB stick into my hand, the kind my grandson uses for school. "From the lobby camera. Was I supposed to keep it? I forget." And then he winked like a boy with chalk on his hands. I have always known when a conversation must be held in the night, when the city is a sleeping cat and the loud people quiet themselves. That night I put the phone on the table, turned off the television, and left the balcony door open to the sound of crickets. I spoke to my husband aloud, which I do sometimes but never for long, and then I spoke to myself. "This won't go on," I said. "We're done pretending this is for my safety. In the morning, I went to the notary with my ID tucked into the hem of my bag like a secret. Elena had a calm face and the sort of voice used for reading recipes, exact without being harsh. "There's a form your son filed," she said, "to update your contact details, and to request an expedited inscription for the donation. The phone number he used isn't the one in your bank file last year. And forgive me, the signature on the change form is traced. We see pressure marks inconsistent with your normal hand." She said it as if describing a stitch that was too tight. Not just wrong but revealing the hand that pulled it. I showed her the typewritten note. She blinked, then went to fetch a heavy book, thick, bound with a ribbon bookmark, the protocol. She let me read under her eye. The donation deed showed that I had appeared with my ID and consented to transfer, reserving my right to live there. In the margin was a note about my difficult day, that I had been upset, so the son had signed under my verbal confirmation. Elena shrugged. "It's legal if true and a problem if not. The notary who did it, Guerrero, is meticulous, but this file has rushing fingerprints. The change of phone was registered 3 days before. A man claiming to be your brother-in-law called to confirm you were forgetful, and that he helped with your bills. Does he?" My brother-in-law, Javier, had been so helpful after the funeral, driving me to the post office, advising me on canceling subscriptions, bringing pastries so I'd eat. He's the kind of man who links an arm through yours like a ribbon on a gift. He had also, I realized now, been the one to suggest avoiding taxes through a donation in life, telling me everyone did it, promising to arrange an appointment when I felt strong. He had printed forms and said to sign here, so he could request copies for me later. He had always brought a pen. I asked Elena if I could challenge the deed. She nodded. "We can inscribe a protective note in the registry while you pursue reversal in court, especially if there are allegations of undue influence." She looked at me and saw everything I was fearing without my saying it. The fights, the nights, the way my son would call me ungrateful. "You will need a lawyer. And witnesses." I left with photocopies and a new thing to add to my envelopes. At the social services office, I met a woman named Teresa who judged me in 3 seconds, and then decided to give me the benefit of the 4th. "You don't want to be a burden," she said, "the way doctors sometimes say breathe. And you realize you've been holding your breath. So use the system's weight to your advantage. If you apply for dependency status, level 2, any move to sell or change your home requires authorization, even if your son holds the title. It protects people with cognitive decline, but it also protects people from being called declined when they're just small and polite." She paused. "It will hurt your pride. You will have a card that says you need help. Do you?" I looked at my hands and imagined the pink tassel of the key. I nodded. "If carrying that card keeps my home on my side of the door, then yes." She snapped the air like a ticket puncher and filled a form. We scheduled a home assessment. I left feeling lighter because I had chosen my burden. It was not being put on me while someone else held the straps. The little victories had sharp edges. Marta, the bank cashier with the red nails, found me on her lunch break under the plane trees and sat with me like a cousin who doesn't like to gossip but will when it matters. "Your card was used to set up standing transfers labeled household to an account ending in 6842, she said. "But your actual household bills are paid by direct debit already." She slid me a small printout and tucked it back into my bag, as if it were a part of my sandwich. "I could lose my job for this, Senora. But my grandmother taught me needlework, and she would haunt me if I didn't help." That day, the apartment contractor arrived early and said he was here to remove the bedroom shelving. I told him no, and he shrugged, looking relieved to have an excuse to leave. When my son came home, he was furious in the tight, quiet way that is worse than shouting. "We're doing all this work to help you and you sabotage us." He took my bank card for safekeeping. At night, I went to my drawer for my original deed, the document with my name and my husband's, the one with the notary's ribbon, and found that folder empty. In its place was a brochure for a residence by the sea, with a woman my age holding hands with a man she had met 5 minutes earlier. They looked happy. I sat down heavily, and the basil on the balcony trembled though the night was still. My phone buzzed with a message from a number labeled unknown. It said, "He came after hours to the notary to adjust your file. We have the access log. Do you want it?" I wrote back, "Who are you?" The reply, "Someone who used to bring your husband the good pens." That was a memory older than my grandson, My husband liked fine pens, and the notary's office had a clerk who'd save the smooth ones for him. Suddenly the past wasn't just a place I visited at night. It had reached forward with a hand to pull me up. Friday came thick with heat and flies. The notary's front room smelled of lemon cleaner and paper in love with itself. My son arrived with Javier and Ana, their shoes shining as if it were Massachusetts. The bank manager came, tie-knotted to make a point. 2 neighbors happened to be there. Rosa for a power of attorney for her niece and a man from the building across the street who needed to notarize a sale of a motorbike. Public places have a way of making private people honest if the air is right. Guerrero the notary was dignified and cautious, the way older professionals are when they sense they are stepping onto a soft carpet covering a hole. He gestured for us to sit. My son began, apologizing for my decline, and emphasizing the urgency of the loan, to repair the apartment for safety. The manager nodded. We have the donation inscribed. We only need the guarantee. I raised my hand like the school secretary I had been. Before we talk, I need to say this. I'm not refusing help. I'm refusing theft dressed in a nurse's shirt. Elena brought in a folder and placed it in front of the notary. Senor, she said, there are irregularities. The phone number on the change form corresponds to Javier's office, not Senora Carmen's. The access log shows someone entered after hours the day the donation was prepared. The protocol indicates the donor was upset. There is no audio record. Guerrero's eyebrows flicked like curtains whisked by a breeze, then rested. Who entered after hours? He looked around the room. Elena didn't blink. According to the system, user Javier used the clerk terminal after 2100 hours with a code borrowed from an intern. Javier shifted in his chair. I put the USB stick on the table. From the lobby camera, it shows Ana coming to my apartment alone with a folder the day the lock was changed, leaving with another folder full. A day later, my original deed was missing. Guerrero signaled to Elena, who slid the USB into a small laptop. The screen showed our building entrance, the timestamp clear, Ana walking fast, glancing over her shoulder the way people do when they're telling themselves they aren't doing what they are. The room went very quiet. Even the lemon cleaner humbled itself. Marta, the cashier with the red nails, came in then, shy as a prayer. She had taken a risk to be there. I saw how her shoulders rounded in her bank jacket, making her smaller. I can't speak for the bank, she began, hands folded. But I can speak for my grandparents. She looked up. A series of transfers labeled household were made from Senora Carmen's account to an account belonging to Ana, ending 6842. Starting the week the phone number was changed. They stopped when the dependency application was filed. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it when Guerrero raised a hand. I took out my newest card, the one from social services, not pretty, a color that looks like mustard and regret. I applied for dependency level 2, I said. It means any sale or mortgage using my home requires social services authorization. I am, as you have told everyone, a burden. So the law must help carry me. There were small gasps like bubbles escaping. My son stared at me as if I had begun speaking Russian. Mama, why would you do that? He whispered. Because you asked me to be one, I answered. And when I carry that word myself, you get no leverage from it. Guerrero straightened his back. Given the allegations and the presented evidence, I cannot proceed with any loan. I will, in fact, file a preventive annotation in the registry and inform the prosecutor for potential undue influence and misappropriation. He looked at Javier. And you, sir, will need to explain your after-hours access. He looked at Ana. And you will need to return any documents not yours. Ana laughed too loudly, the laugh of someone who has been clinking glasses for too many afternoons. This is a circus. She stood up. Carmen agreed to all this. The grandmother routine is charming, but she's been forgetting everything. She held out her hands as if we might all be foolish enough to take them. At that moment, my grandson Nico pushed open the door. He had a phone in his hand and tears he wanted to blink away. Mama, he said to Ana, voice shaking. You told me to say Abuela left the stove on and almost burned my Lego, but I recorded it because I thought it was funny. It's not funny. He looked at me like a boy negotiating with a god he thought might be listening. Rosa, my cousin, who had come to notarize something boring, cleared her throat and said into the silence, we all gossip too much and we all think we're helping when we meddle. But taking someone's keys and their voice is not helping. In Valencia, we call that taking the air out of a room. She sat back, satisfied, having put her pebble on the scale. The man with the motorbike document nodded because there are scenes everyone understands even when they arrive to witness by accident. Anna's face changed in a way I had never seen. The mask turned and the skin behind it was tired and mean. Javier pretended to be wounded, but his eyes darted to the door. My son stared at his hands and saw, perhaps for the first time in months, what they had been trained to do without his noticing. He spoke very softly. "Mama, I just wanted to make sure you were safe." His voice broke on the word safe. I believed him enough to forgive the boy he once was, but not enough to excuse the man he let himself be. In the weeks after, the apartment was mine again in writing, not just in cooking smells and dents in the sofa. The registry carried Guerrero's note like a guard with a whistle. Any attempt to move money against my home would have tripped an alarm. Javier stayed away. My sister told me he was taking time to reflect, which is a polite way to say he was hiding. The prosecutor called me to give a statement. I spoke slowly and said everything with the same care I used to thread a needle so the thread doesn't fray. Elena swore that if anyone tried to adjust my file again she would bite them, and she has the kind of calm that makes such a threat charming and persuasive. My son apologized every day for a month and I let him the way you let your legs ache after a long climb. I did not move back into his embrace. We set rules. I kept my keys on a plain ring and 3 duplicates in 3 places he does not control. Only I hold my bank phone. He will never again prepare a form for me. He signed a written acknowledgement, and I asked Guerrero to notarize it. Not because I wanted to threaten him but because written things keep people honest when feelings get soppy. Anna stayed angry and then deflated. Later I learned she returned some of the money quietly through Marta's teller window. I did not make a scene. It is more humiliating to do the right action in the light than to be dragged to it. The neighbors adjusted with the speed of people who need to be right for themselves. Don Emilio presented me with a new basil plant larger and said he had always believed in me, which is not true but is kind, and I accepted it as such. Rosa stopped saying "Poor Carmen," and began asking me for advice on her roof leak. The bank manager started greeting me by name again, but better still, Marta winked when she thought no one could see. Nico still came for merienda twice a week, and we spoke about truth the way you talk about soccer with examples and laughter and small betrayals. He gave me his video to keep, and we agreed we would only use it if someone tried to make lies into furniture again. My son and I went to family therapy once. He hated it and I didn't, and we decided that this too could be put in writing. He would try harder to speak to me directly and not through Anna's moods. I kept the dependency card. It gives me discounts on some classes and a ride to the community center when it rains. Maybe I'll ask to be reassessed next year. Maybe I won't. It is a label that gave me back my door. I'm teaching a sewing workshop at the center. The first week the girls wanted to make bags, but I told them we'd start with buttonholes because holding things together begins there. I have a little jar on the table where students drop coins if they can. We're saving for a field trip to the fabric market. I wrote a new will with a condition. The apartment will go to my grandchildren when they reach 25, if they complete any course they love. Not university necessarily, a course that means something to them. The will says nothing about burden. It describes the basil plant in private words. The plant that will need someone to check it every morning. Elena said it was eccentric to mention a plant. Guerrero allowed it because he has learned my kind of precision. People ask what the lesson is as if life were a class and I could issue grades. I don't have one single sentence to give. But I can give you scenes. A key with a tassel that looked like a toy and was meant to make me small. A notary book bound with a ribbon that survived too many pens. A mustard-colored card that made my shoulders set back instead of bending. My grandson's wobbling voice calling me abuela like it was the first time he understood the word. And this. The sound a door makes when it opens to your own hand again. Not loud, not cinematic, just the right click after the wrong one. Now, some mornings when I water the basil, I place a second pot next to it so it doesn't grow lonely. I don't know if plants feel shame or relief, but I know I do. I stand on the balcony and ask the city what it will cost me to stay honest, and it answers with scooters and church bells and the quiet of people carrying groceries upstairs. If you were here with me, I'd pour you coffee and show you the little envelope where I keep a new kind of list, names of those who spoke up when it counted so I remember to thank them on their birthdays with marmalade. The jar is almost full. And if you are thinking about the way that first key felt in my palm, and whether I kept it, I did. I keep it on the shelf by the door, where bad ideas sometimes sit until they are harmless. Sometimes I touch it before I leave, just to remember what it took to make the new one.